I saw this in the forums, and this is why I always encourage people not to use the insert methodology. Was I saw a guy in the forums struggling with this problem where he couldn't figure out why his objects weren't being managed by Composer. And pretend, if you will, that line 23 to 27 here are all the function display new image rect. And he created a bunch of images, and he put them all in the same named variable. He called it ground or something like that. And then at the very end of his code, he said group insert ground, group insert ground. And he had the exact same number of inserts, but then I had to write him back and say, no. Only the last one you made is getting inserted. All the other ones that were created before that,
you have no way of referring to them.
So it's, people, they do this as a, what is it? They don't understand what's going on. They're just doing things because they saw it. And so there's a disconnect between the understanding of how it works and what they're doing. And so anyways,
reproducing a pattern in the code, yeah. It's
not physical or mechanical. It's some logic in there. All right, so I just wanted to say that this example, as I said, is very short, and it's got 5 sections to it. Section 1, call the ground builder and create the ground. Section 2, call the car builder, create the car. Section 3, create 3 images, one for the gravity button, the button that we will use to toggle gravity on and off, one for the left movement button, one for the right movement button, and then step 4, I define some very simple functions that do some work when you press the buttons. And in step 5, I connect those functions to the images and, in a sense, effectively turn the images into buttons that do something in the environment. For example, clicking this one will turn on gravity, or clicking it will turn it, if it's green, gravity is on, if it's white, gravity is off. Clicking the left arrow will spin the left wheel and make it spin to the left, so the car moves left. Clicking the right button will spin the right wheel and make the car go to the right. So the code that we mostly want to focus on today, although I'll show it all, is the car code. And I'm thinking, having said that, that maybe I should get the simple code out of the way first. So let me take people quickly through the easy button code so they can understand what's going on there. In the module Easy Button Lua is I called it Builder, I could have called it anything. It's a simple module that has some functions in it. One of them is Add Touch, another one is Easy Push, and the third one here so far is Easy Toggle. Now Add Touch is basically a function that gives me the ability to add a touch listener to an object in one line of code. So instead of having to type this out every time and provide the code that goes in the listener or the callback, all I need to do is call add touch, pass in the object that I want to add the touch to, and call a function that needs to be called every time the person touches the object or releases the object. It's a very simple two-touch sort of button. So again, what happens is if you pass in a function and you touch the object, what will occur is that function will be called, and then when you lift your finger or the touch is ended, the function will be called again. And those are the only 2 times the function will be called. There's no moved, there's none of the other standard phases. So I've reduced this whole thing so that when I write examples, that I can keep them very, very short. And let's see, did I use that? Yes, I did. So an example of this was the left and right movement buttons. So if we look back up here, I basically created an arrow, 2 arrows, and find the example again. So this here is the left button and the right button, obviously. And they're just images at this point. At this point in the code, they're simply images. Then I wrote 2 functions. The onLeft function, which takes the event from the listener, And basically it says if the event phase is began, we set the left wheel speed to something. And if it is ended, we set the left wheel speed to 0. And I don't want to do anything in the case of moved or anything like that. So this way my event listener is very simple. It doesn't need to return a value. And the reason it doesn't need to return a value is because I use my easy button builder to attach that function to the left button. And so in this line here we call easy button add touch. I pass in the left button image and this little function right here. And then what actually occurs is I attach a touch event listener to the object that was passed in, the left button, and I set it up to detect began phase and end phase, and it does a little bit of work here. If it's began, it sets the fill color for the object to green, as we saw. And if it is ended, it sets it back to white, the default fill. And the only other piece of work it does is it calls whatever function was passed as the second argument, and it passes it the event from the touch. And then what occurs then is as I touch it, that event comes in here. I check the phase, I set the wheel speed, or if it's ended, I set it to 0. So that's probably the most complicated of these. The push button it's similar, but instead of doing work in began, it sets the color to green, or it sets it to white, just like the previous one. But it only calls the callback at the ended phase. So in other words, when I click on the object and then when I release, the event that I want to occur, the listener, gets executed. So that, whereas with this button here, I have it executing on the begin and the end. If I have a case where I only want it to execute one time for the click, I use the easy push. Then there's one more case, which is the toggle button. So the gravity button, what we would like to be able to do, start this, is we'd like gravity to start off, and then if I click this, I want the button to be in the on state, and I also want gravity to be on. However, I want to be able to click it again, and then the button is now reflecting that it is in the off state, but it is properly called the listener in such a way that it says, hey, undo what you just did, which was in this case to turn gravity off.